Hey everyone, Dr. Brent Siebold back with you for another installment of Make It Happen here at Arizona State University, powered by the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering, Entrepreneurship and Innovation. To be specific, we are very excited to welcome one of our long-standing Sherpas in the domain of entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurship. My friend and my colleague, Tom Zender, is here with us. Tom and I first met, I think, back in 2015, 2016. Tom, maybe you can clarify that for me, but we were just reminiscing about all of the ways Tom has added value to our entrepreneurial programs, whether that be our university-wide Venture Devils program, which, by the way, over 50% of all Venture Devils hail from the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering. So we have a great number of technically minded students and faculty and alumni who are actively venturing. So Tom is one of our venture mentors within that program. So if you are considering advancing an entrepreneurial idea, a nonprofit, more than profit, or for-profit concept, you could be lucky enough to be assigned Tom Zender as your venture mentor. So Tom, thanks for your service there. And then one other thing I'll tell you about Tom is more recently, he's gotten involved with our engineering projects and community service program within engineering. So we have a great number of student engineers who are solving problems that are put forward by community-based entities all over the world, from Vietnam to here in Phoenix to the Navajo Nation, you name it. We are working on solving big problems by leveraging the engineering design process. And Tom, as a business leader, has joined engineering projects and community service to help those individual teams advance their concepts by leveraging leadership practices that will hopefully move the needle. So without further ado, Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I know you have to share your screen, so at any point you want to do that, feel free. But Tom, if you don't mind, say hello to everybody, and we're anxious to hear from you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for being here. One lead in to, I think, a primary reason that I'm able to do this kind of work at ASU is my background. And it began with software engineering, software development. Most of my career has been in the IT industry or some aspect of it. And that is where I also migrated into business and many different aspects of business. I had leadership roles at GE and Honeywell, and then a series of other kinds of companies. I've been a senior vice president in a Fortune 400 company, and I've been on the boards of NASDAQ and Toronto Stock Exchange companies. And I'm very grateful for that because it gave me a very rich, deep background that I appreciate and I can utilize in my work today. I also mentor a number of CEO clients here in the Valley of small, medium, and large companies. And I've written 7 books, largely about leadership, some business ethics, and I've written over 250 columns about leadership for the Phoenix Business Journal. And they're all available. You just go to the journal and search on my name and you'll find more than you want. So that's enough of me. I will see if I can get screen sharing going.
While Tom's doing that, I'll tell you I'm a subscriber to Tom's weekly leadership newsletter. And in fact, his most recent leadership newsletter just came out. So Tom, I'm very grateful to be included on your newsletter. I think I've only received complimentary copies of your various leadership books. So I'm thankful that I didn't have to buy your most recent edition on Amazon to get such great content on a weekly basis. So that's a great invitation to all of the students and entrepreneurially minded leaders who have joined us today to definitely Google Tom Zender, and I'll put in chat some hints as to where you can find Tom and all of his great content online too. So, thanks,
well, thank you. So originally we were going to title this talk, Learn Leadership and purpose. And I added the word strategic because my discovery for myself is that learning to be a leader with a strategic bent was very helpful in my career, and including a couple of startups that I worked with. And then even more recently, the idea of purpose being part of leadership has come into the picture. Now, along the way, I'll share some of that with you. There we go. So one thing I want to do is distinguish between leadership and management, because there's often a lot of confusion or lack of differentiation. They're the same, and they're not. And what is purpose? What does it mean? Where did it come from? And why is purpose important? And just playing with some words here, Brent often uses the umbrella statement of make it happen in this series of talks, or the talks themselves. And I happen to agree with that, make it happen. And recently I thought about, well, if I made it happen, how did that come to be? So back to the question of leadership and management. This is just a very brief contrast. I have several dozen of these contrasts to try to help us all understand, well, what's common and what's different about leadership and management. And one contrast is that leaders drive strategy, and managers tend to drive the action that come out of those strategic plans and decisions and behaviors. Leaders create vision, and managers will tend to follow the vision and help. And then leaders lead people, and managers tend to manage processes. These are not exclusive and tightly differentiated. They're not separate. They are largely commingled. And one statement is that many CEOs are not leaders. And there are also individual contributors within organizations who are phenomenal leaders. You don't have to have people reporting to you to be a leader. So, and title doesn't give you good leadership. So these are just a few things along the way to remember. I became interested in strategic planning, strategic development very early in my career. And at that time, the keystone of strategic thinking and development was mission. Everybody was wadded up in what's your mission? And there was a lot of work done around that. And that the term mission largely comes out of military environments, but it quickly translated into business. And so then around the time of when Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were getting some traction with their companies, the idea of vision became the keystone of strategic planning. You know, what's your vision? And mission tends to describe what the organization does, for whom, and how we do it. Vision tends to describe, well, what are we going to look like in the future? E.g., in 5 years, we will be the dominant provider of such and such a product. And if you want to give it some numbers, you can say dominant means we'll be 1.5 times the size of our nearest competitor, as an example, or when this will happen. But then within the last several years, the idea of purpose started to pop up. And I was really interested in that. I began to learn more about it. I watched a Simon Sinek talk that has a lot of, a TED talk that has a lot of notoriety. So you can see it, it's about 5-6 minutes long. He does a great job of describing why, the meaning of why, and the impact on YouTube. S-I-M-O-N, last name Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. So if you search on his name in YouTube, you'll see several of his talks, one of which does a really good job on purpose. So then, in my world and many others, purpose became the driving force behind strategic thinking, strategic planning, and strategic actions. It's the why, it's the context of the rest of the statements. So here is what I call the strategic stack, and it's hierarchical. And I believe as leaders, we need to at least understand this, even if we're not immersed in it, or where our job is not to create strategic plans. But to just understand this as an individual, whether you're a leader or not, can offer a lot of strength into your career. This is a way of thinking, and it is absolutely a way to make decisions. Good decision making really depends upon the extent of our strategic stack and putting it together and working with it. You may contribute to a strategic plan at some point in your career. That is highly likely. Good strategic plans involve many people rather than just one thinker. So enough of that. And so purpose, more about purpose. Applied to business, it could be, well, why does this business exist? What are we doing for the world around us? It's an external view, whereas we find that vision tends to be the internal view of what we're going to be like or what we're doing. But purpose is external. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time with this to give it a complete flavoring. It can also be individualized, and we'll do a little exercise toward the end that will make it more individualized. You could ask for, if you're an engineer and working on an engineering product, why am I doing this? What's the real reason? You could say, well, I want to form my own business and make money. Good. But what good are you doing for the world around you by the development of a particular product? So one example that Gabe may be aware of is that last year and the way before, I mentored some engineering students who were creating a way to help Alzheimer's patients with a particular set of glasses, a Pi computer, lots of software to help Alzheimer's patients recognize their loved ones, their relatives, their friends, by simply seeing an image that pops up as a result of facial identification or whatever technique is used. So this was an example of an ethics engineering project that had a very real reason for creating it. And interestingly, I met them at EPICS, the engineering buildings, and they migrated into the Venture Devil program over at SkySong. And I'm no longer their mentor, but I'm just demonstrating a very valid relationship between engineering and the EPICS program and the implementation of a business. So here are some examples of corporate purposes. Hilton. Notice Hilton is not advertising hotels, motels, food, or any of their other services. Their purpose, they say, is to fill the earth with the light and warmth of hospitality. That's the context. And so when we look at something like this or see it in an advertisement or run into it somewhere, you get a feeling that this is of a higher level. This is to do something good for their world. You can say, well, it's just advertising hoke, but I don't think so. I think when a company is imbued with this type of thinking among their people, it kind of lights up the organization. And as you would see in the Simon Sinek video, it has a certain attraction to it. So that's one. Another one is McGrawHill, particularly their textbook division. So they're not saying buy our books or we have better books or any of that kind of stuff. Look at their purpose. They're creating economic growth, job creation, and a smarter, better world. We can agree or disagree, but this is why they exist. This is the why of their business. Again, a higher level way of seeing things. Ditto Johnson & Johnson, healthcare products. They could advertise or push all kinds of their products and services. But look at their grander purpose, which is caring for the world one person at a time. The one person at a time lends the idea of I matter, or at least they think I matter. They say I matter. And by the way, all of these companies I'm giving you examples of, they've had problems all along the way. They're good, big growing corporations, and largely they've done a good job for us. But they do make mistakes, and Johnson & Johnson has made several. But they place themselves, I think, on a higher pinnacle by saying, this is why we exist. This is why our business is. Nintendo, games, digital games. Again, they're not hyping what they create, what they produce, what they market. Their job, their purpose, the why, is to put smiles on the faces of everyone we touch. Nike. It's not about selling athletic shoes or athletic clothing or whatever else they provide. The words inspiration and innovation are key, and to every athlete in the world, not just the professionals, but you know, to kids playing basketball in a neighborhood park or lot or whatever it might be. So I just want you to get the flavor of how some major corporations see purpose, how they state it. And it's an attraction to their employees, to their providers, to their customers, probably to their shareholders. So I invite you to begin to think of purpose, certainly in a business sense, certainly in an academic sense. Why are you at ASU? Would be one question of what's the purpose? To get a degree, probably, and good. That may be more your vision and your mission, but at least one reason you're at ASU is to learn, and maybe learn and become able to apply it in a much broader outer world sense. So a little more about the rest of the strategic stack. We've had enough on purpose. Vision tends to be an internal view, whereas purpose is external. What will we become in 3 years? What is our intended size and scope? Mission, really, what do we do? What are our products and services? Who do we serve? What's our customer base look like? And how do we do business? Some may be retail, some may be wholesale, some may be online. Lots of different ways of how we do business. But the mission says, what do we do? Values also have increased in their presence in the business world. And it really centers on, well, what are our beliefs and attitudes and behaviors? How strong are they? How strong are they? How well do we live them? I've seen a number of leaders in my career, or CEOs, who say, yep, here are our values. We'll put them on a brass plaque in the lobby, and those are our values. But they don't enact them. They don't enable them in the organization. So it's all just words. And our culture is the result of our values. How do we display our values in our work environment? Behaviors. So nearing the bottom of the strategic stack, what are our goals? What are our numerical, quantitative, and even qualitative goals that we want to achieve in a given period of time? This year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And what are our goals in terms of what do we want to achieve in terms of our product stream? What kind of customers are we after? And what are our financial goals? And all of this has to be measurable to say, well, we're going to achieve this or that. What's the measure? What's the measure along the way, and what's the measure once we achieve a given goal? So I don't mean for strategy to be at the bottom of the stack, but taking all those other pieces of the stack together, purpose, vision, mission, values, culture, etc., goals, how will we achieve all that given limited resources. How can we succeed with limited resources? Limited time, space, money, abilities. What's the path to take in order to have the best shot at achieving our goals and everything else in the stack? So it's at this point that strategic plans are developed. And I can show you a way to put a complete, doable, measurable strategic plan together on 3 pages. It's a bit of a deception because decades ago, strategic plans were three-ring binders filled up with pieces of paper that nobody read and was all put on a shelf and largely ignored and then gotten out a year later to update. So I invite you, when you think about strategy, think about a very brief, understandable, measurable, repeatable strategic plan, strategic business plan, or whatever it might be. I have seen some personal strategies worked out. So I would invite you to have a personal purpose. What is your individual purpose? Now, you could write this in terms of a project you're working on, a degree you're working toward, or any other aspect of your life. What might be your life purpose if you think about that? And I suppose we can make this up and say, well, are there sub-purposes? And I think so. I haven't really dealt with that myself, but I do have a personal purpose that has evolved over the years. And it's kind of my, my grand view of me and what I'm here for. So would you take about a minute to write your purpose? And then when we have a time of questions and answers, if you feel like stating your purpose to this audience, feel free. Or not, it's okay. It can be anonymous, it can be just for you and your understanding and part of your life. So take a minute and just draft a 1-sentence statement of your purpose from whatever context you want to look at it.
Hey, Tom, it's Brent again, just chiming in as folks are hopefully writing in their notebooks or on their devices or wherever they might be jotting this down. During the Q&A, I hope we can revisit this particular activity with maybe a couple of examples from earlier in your presentation. So if folks are stuck on this, I would love to maybe hear a couple of examples and maybe call on a few folks to share their purpose, myself included, during the Q&A.
Great, thank you. Okay, so at this point, I think I'm obligated to share my purpose with you. And it looks like this. This has not always been my purpose, believe me. In years gone by, my purpose was to make as much money as I could and then spend it. So this is an evolution of me and my life. But my purpose is to influence my community for good. And my community includes my family, my neighbors, ASU, my mentoring work, all of that. I strive for doing good, influencing my community members for good. And could this change? Again, yes, but I tend to hang on to this one as an overall guiding light for me. So with that, I think I've burned up 20 minutes or so, and I thank you. And I will stop sharing. All right. I guess I better rejoin.
No, thank you so much, Tom. I apologize. I muted your video just to keep your data stream low, but on behalf of everyone here, you didn't by any means you didn't chew up any time. That was great content, really important aspects for all of us to either reconsider. I know many folks around this table have been exposed to some of the concepts that you've shared with us today, but hearing it from you, Tom, certainly reinforces the importance of this strategic stack. So without further ado, I'm going to, again, thanks Tom for his time and energy. I'm going to go ahead and conclude the recording of this Make It Happen session, and then I'm going to hopefully turn it over to everyone here to engage Tom in the time he has remaining within his day today to answer any questions we might have or clarify any of his guidance. So thanks so much, Tom. Any final words for the millions of viewers on YouTube?
Just thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Brent, and thank you all of you for just being here and participating. Thank you. It's gratifying for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.